brothers, and also the beloved sisters. We welcome you once again to Black Men Declare. I'm the Godfather Mike Side. With me in the virtual studio, Cyber Key and the Peacemaker. Good morning, brothers. How y'all doing this morning?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, brothers. Good morning, man.
Yeah, man, it's been a crazy last week or so. So much is going on, and I tell you, it seems like we're living in a world now where liars with a lot of money can make anything happen. It's like, where do you start when you think about those things that are going on today? I even saw just yesterday when Jack Smith, who was the one investigating the misappropriation and the misuse of documents, has made a personal request to testify only in public if the Republicans would grant him that liberty. And I began to think about that and said, wow, you'd have to ask somebody to have the opportunity to come forth and tell the truth from their perspective instead of going only behind closed doors and with the Republicans. Brothers, I don't know, man. It's just another example of the hypocrisy and the bipolar reality that we see in America, where we're supposed to be telling the truth, but so many people are afraid to allow the truth to come out. And then you look at what's going on with the Epstein situation, and they won't swear in this 218th person so that they can get that vote to say, no, those files must be released. To the things we heard yesterday about Chauncey Billups involved with a gambling scheme and the mafia. I mean, things are just crazy. I just never seen anything like it. So many distractions. And where then 47 says he don't want to deal with Canada anymore because they're doing something and sharing what Ronald Reagan had to say when he was in the presidency. What's going on out there, my brothers? What's happening? What's happening? Come on, somebody talk to me.
Well, good morning to all our brothers and sisters of Black Men Declare, and to you, to my brothers, Sabaki and Godfather. There is so much going on and so much distraction, and I would admit, even to myself and to you all, that it is difficult to focus on one specific thing. But I think that we have to align ourselves and somewhat decide what we're going to conquer and what are we going to address. I've learned in my life that the more you spread yourself thin, the less likely you are to be effective. And doesn't mean that we have to just do one thing, but we have to choose one or two things to um, speak about and do. It is amazing that truth will. You got to ask to tell the truth. But in this time of AI, in this time of editing videos, it is better to speak live where your words cannot be changed or your video can't be edited. So I think we have to decide, what are we going to speak about, what are we going to do, and what issues we're going to tackle.
Peace, my brothers and my colleagues in this fight for truth, freedom, justice, and equality. Good to be back on with my brothers. Man, there's so much. I look at the Stephen A. Smith controversy about his comments on Jasmine Crockett. Then I looked at the Breakfast Club interview that they had with Andrew Young and John Hope Bryant. And man, it's like, in my opinion, we as black folks have gotten worse. We're getting closer to white folks than we ever could have imagined. And I mean, our thought processes, the way we handle each other, the way we try to whitewash history. And what I'm talking about is Mr. Andrew Young and his conversations that he had about Malcolm and Martin, and his attempt to whitewash history and paint it one way. And as I mentioned to Charlemagne and them, I had a conversation on social media. I said we're not any different than what white folks do. What if white folks tried to give a one-way version of what they thought about Harriet Tubman? How would we feel? There are people that's out here that walk with Dr. King. I mean, that walk with Malcolm X. That you don't have on to give another viewpoint. Then you have John Hope Bryan giving his thoughts, and he was nowhere near. He was nowhere around. So as Black people in journalism, or giving opinion on podcasts, and you're not even having a conversation to get real history, and you just want to whitewash one side of what you want to paint it in this, like everybody was civil rights and everybody agreed on this, and that's a lie. It's a lie. But that's where we at in the Black community, where we only want to see one thing, and that's the reason why we continue to go down this rabbit hole or go have this fight in the Black community, and why we can't get nowhere.
Now, you said something very powerful there, Cyber. I remember hearing a conversation with Andrew Young, who I respect, but what he said at this particular time, I didn't respect. When he said he felt sorry for the Ku Klux Klan, you all might remember that interview he had. And it was on one of those major networks, and I really couldn't believe those words came out of his mouth. It's almost like these brothers, when they became, greater than 70 or greater than 75, of which I am. I thank God my mind has not changed that way. I couldn't believe those words that came out of his mouth. And when we have our elders beginning, as you say, sounding and promoting the philosophy of the European, especially that hegemon philosophy of dominance and control, is really shameful. I saw John Hope Bryan. He was giving a speech recently where he was attempting to admonish the audience that without the Black folks in America, America would fall. Yet when you hear him speaking almost the total opposite, depending on the crowd or depending on the audience, that's what gets me, because we have to be consistent regardless who we are speaking of. The one thing I love about Muhammad Ali, love about Minister Farrakhan, is that regardless of the crowd, they are and were consistent. Now, and you couldn't really challenge the facts that they would share. Now, I will say Minister Farrakhan over time seems to have learned or have changed how he might bring that truth in a more conciliatory manner, but yet he still brings the truth. And, I love listening to that brother because of that. And when we have leaders who were leaders failing to be consistent in their commentary, it brings confusion, and it reinforces the bipolar mental state that we as Black Americans are in the first place. I don't know, brother. That's a powerful perspective right there.
I'm sorry, brother. For me, my brother, it's just that we are not having the dialogue, and that is the challenge in Black America right now. You would think that let's take this past presidential election for example. We knew that there was critical conversations on the table, but if you only got one side of it, which is the ultra left, liberal-minded black people that is pushing that agenda, and if you disagree with that agenda, they automatically assume that you are a Republican. They push you off as a Republican, try to outcast you from your culture, from everything, because you simply disagree. And we can't move as a unit if we continue to have a one-sided dialogue. That's my challenge with Black America at this moment. It's a one-sided dialogue. It's been this way since the civil rights movement, but people are standing up, especially Black men are standing up and saying, hey, no, we over here. We think this way. Now there's a fight, seem to be a clash online where you're having Black men against Black women, because a lot of Black men started saying, no, hey, we don't believe that way. We don't believe in that ultra left liberalism where just anything goes. We want some structure. We want to have faith behind every decision that we want to move, and now you got this big clash between Black women and Black men. So this is the challenge that we find ourselves in.
That's powerful, powerful, brother. And brother Peacemaker, you're a little bit, younger than me. Well, quite a bit younger than me. A little bit older than Cyber Keith. When you look at this conflict between men and women, man, I know it's got to be confusing. I mean, you want to say in your mind, you don't want to see our women objectified, but doggone it. It seems like the very thing that the Willie Lynch letter, either right or wrong, real or unreal, and the objectification of our ancestors, these sisters have embraced it. We had a discussion about that just last night, of whether or not Black women are objectifying themselves versus, the European doing it. They seem to have embraced that very thing. And now, as Cyber say, you got this battle online. What's going on, brother? You not married. We both are. Maybe you have a perspective that's different. I don't know.
Yeah.
What you think?
I can tell you that the climate that is out there today is, and not to quote her, Beyonce, but it's all about independent woman. And I think that they have taken this independent woman too far to say, and they've been taught and groomed to be independent and not in need of a man. There is a song by Jill Scott that talks about, I don't need a man, but I want a man. And the difference, she's saying that she can do all these things, but I want a man to share the experience with, to share my ups and downs with. And in today's society, it's all about get all you can get on dates. I don't need to go to this restaurant. I need you to take me to that steakhouse. I don't want to. You gotta do my nails and unfortunately, there are a lot of women who feel that way. Unfortunately, I come from old school. I was taught by my grandparents and my parents that when you go out, that you take care of the bill. But what I'm learning is that it shouldn't be a thing of let's be a partner. Let's learn. Let's learn each other. Let's date, and let me not just finance you. So if you look at social media, and if you talk to a lot of sisters today, you will see they're just looking for a financier, someone who's going to help pay their bills and pay this and that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of men who feel that's the only way to get a woman. So we have to redirect and re-educate how we feel about relationships, how we feel about marriage, and what we feel about the Black family. Because if we don't, there will be no Black family.
That's powerful, because that issue is so prevalent right now in our community that you're speaking of, like not needing a man, not, what's the word? I hear all of these conversations on if a man take them to this type of restaurant, how they feel versus how they would feel if he take them to a restaurant that costs about $600-700. What they saying, if a man only spending $150 on our first date, that's a problem. Like that what we have allowed, and this is goes back to what I originally said, we have allowed other people to tell us a narrative. And it's through movies, it's through reality TV, it's through music. We have we are good at orchestrating the culture. We're good at waving the wand in front of the culture and everybody do it. But people are not telling us that they were puppet masters behind the wand person, pulling the strings and telling that wand person what to actually do, what chords to hit that they want the symphony to hit and everything. And that's how the Black community has been led. Other people has been controlling our culture for so long. And we have to step up and push our own narrative. We have these big platforms now. We have these big platforms, but if you look at it, they're sponsored by companies that don't look like us. So if they're taking money from companies that don't look like us, what does that say? They're only going to be allowed to go so far as pushing the narrative of the Black community. That's the one thing I like about the Grits and Eggs podcast so far with our brother, my brother, I think his name is Dante. Dante, the Grits and Eggs, man, that brother brings so much. You may not like the cussing and all of that, but the truth that he brings, I find it refreshing. I find it refreshing to have somebody like that, or like a 19 Keys that said, no, we're not taking these sponsor deals. We're going to create our own RZA Islam, create our own products. We're going to make our own money, so that way nobody can finance us, and we could come and say our level of truth without anybody impeding that.
Well, Cyber, you know how I think about that, brother. I agree with that, brother. I don't want to have any of those. I remember back in the day, he reminded me of my corporate America days when I would go to some of these NMSDC national conventions, and you walk in and you see all of the Fortune 100 companies and all of them bragging about how much business they've been doing with Black business people they called minorities. I always disliked that term, minorities. And I would say to myself, see, here's the problem. You got all of these major corporations in here, which means, just like you say, whatever brother or sister that comes on to speak at these particular sessions, they're going to have to compromise their honesty, because if they speak anything that would be construed as indifferent, then they're going to potentially lose some of the money that they have been given to put these conventions on. And although the price seemed high to go there, it still would have been better if everybody paid their fully own way instead of receiving, some kind of support even to attend them. And so, we have to learn to be financially independent. I know it's difficult, but yet we still have one of the largest economies in the world. If we can just simply learn. Look what happened again. That takes me into the concept of integration once again. I grew up in a city that was black. It was a black city. And I saw Black business people. Yeah, there were some whites there as well, especially this one store that was ran by some Jews, and they had on their white shirts and black ties, and that kind of motivated me. Then as a child, I want to be a business person. And then going through corporate America, then having businesses on my own, going to that full cycle. We've got to learn how to be independent and then come together. I heard something the other day that was so simple, but it was yet so profound. When are we going to learn to just work together, be together, and trust ourselves? Because until we learn to fundamentally love each other and trust each other, as you say, Cyber, we will always be sub-optimized.
Yeah, I think that this economy and with this current presidency, I think we're gonna have to. We definitely will learn that lesson that we need to go back to what worked for us before: bargaining, looking out for each other, making sure that no one is left out in the cold. I've read stories and I've heard stories how, if I was in need of sugar and somebody else had it and I had eggs, I can trade some of my eggs for somebody else's sugar. And though people might say, well, it's not the same. I remember being able to do some work for somebody, and somebody did some work for me. And that was just the way we bargained with each other, because we said, okay, you have a need and I have a need. So how can we assist each other? And I think in this economy, with everything having to do now with online and electronic, and even now with the lack of cash that's being and coins that's being put out there, if we don't get back to a place of bargaining and looking out for each other, we're gonna always be behind.
I think that what your brother said. I think for me that's the reason why I strongly disagree with integration. Even though I wasn't around, just looking at it and reading through history, reading through what has happened, what was happening, and what's happening now, and trying to formulate my opinion through the years. I've come to a stance of strongly being in a disagreement with integration, because now all of those things that we did have that it took us a long time to achieve during slavery, after slavery, and just over a matter of 60 years, we have lost it all, whether it be our infrastructure, which means our bus companies, our own hotels, own grocery stores, on all of that. We lost it. Then we lost the skills that would have helped us to rebuild it. So now you go, there's a push to say that all black boys need to go to some level of trade school, which I actually agree with. But now what you're doing is you're trying to recapture that moment so we can rebuild. But we're trying to rebuild in the middle of this, in the middle of a crisis. Like, this has been happening, but everybody went along with this integration until the current president came in and showed that white supremacy was never dead. It just was hiding in plain sight. Now we sounded an alarm that we are in this critical hour, critical moment. Now we're trying to go back and say, you know what, we need to get these skills, we need to get this so we can rebuild our community, rebuild, blah, blah, blah. And at the same time, they're pulling all of the money from the black community. They're pulling all of the college opportunities in some cases. They're pulling all of that, and it's a crisis. The house is burning, and we're trying to say, "Oh, we need to get all of this. We need to do it." We're in the cluster. I would say the other word that go with cluster, but you can only imagine. So it's a tough situation that we find ourselves in.
My brother Cyber, Booker T. Washington said it in the Great Atlanta Exposition in 1905, I believe, when he said, in all things social, we should be like an open hand. In all things for America, we could be like a clenched fist. And, that always inspired me. And there's a brother that was part of desegregation back in the day in 1968, and, catching 3 buses to go to school, to get there by 8 o'clock and getting home at 8 o'clock at night, being part of that group that broke through a lot of those integration barriers. At that time, we didn't have the foresight to see, to know, to understand what was going on, but we felt we had to show and prove that we could compete academically and athletically, and we proved that. There's nobody today that would doubt if a black man or woman has the mental capability to compete in anywhere, doing anything. We've gone from being slaves to being the president of these United States of America. But what it did to us, and think about even the concept of family. I mean, we went from having almost a 90% married rate to now less than almost 25%. I mean, all of that because of integration, all of that because of what we began to be exposed, thinking the grass was greener on the other side. I mean, that I agree with you. I mean, while I was one of those that proved not only in school, academically and athletically, proved it in corporate America, being very successful there. But as I look now at my children, and I know you and I have children, and I know the peacemaker, has some nieces that and nephews that he's very close to. We can see the difference. We can't duplicate our experience in them, but we have to share our experience with them. And so much of that I believe today as we see in the objectification again. I just can't seem to get that out of my mind in these last few days, and how we just seem to embrace that. And now we have this clash going on between our black men and black women about, who's this and who's that. And as you indicated, I know you have, four daughters, Cyber, and I've got three. And when I listen to them, sometimes I have to straighten them out and say, oh no, I don't want you going out with somebody and you expecting them to pay the bill. I want you to pay the bill for you. And if you're going out more than once and you call yourself dating, you pay the bill for both of you. Don't get caught up in that mindset that every time you go out, because when you do, that man in this dispensation going to expect something from you. And if you don't act right, he may act crazy. So we got to continue, man, to share. You say old school peacemaker, that ain't old school, man. That's just wise school. It's my opinion. It's wise school, brother.
Yeah, it is definitely interesting. I just see that and have experienced it, myself. So,
Phew, you mean they expect you to pay all the time?
There is, if you remember, because we've had, conversations before where I was dating this young lady and had been dating her for about 6 months. And around her birthday was around the same as mine. And she said that she wanted what they call an LV bag, a Louis Vuitton bag. And she didn't just want a little bag, but she wanted the big satchel. That at the time it was like $2,500, $2,800, and then she wanted the little charms. And I told her, that's almost $3,000. And I remember telling you and some other brothers that was married, and the thing that you all said was, "I'm married. I would even buy my married wife a $3,000 bag." I said, "Yeah, but this is what they expect." And she told me that because I could not, or I decided not to buy her that bag, that she was reconsidering our relationship. And so then I unfortunately, I told her, well, there's no need to reconsider it. Just call it canceled. It's done with. We're done. I'm not going to be, bullied or pushed into a financial decision. And we still haven't been committed to each other. We're just still learning each other after 6 months. But I remember all of us having that conversation, and how you all said, "I'm married and I wouldn't buy my wife a $3,000 bag. And you're not married. You've only known this woman for 6 months." And I said, yes, unfortunately, that's where we are in today's society.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad I'm not out there in that world, man, because it's some of these women, man, right now are just, I mean, I see it, man. I see the message, the hidden agendas on a lot of these shows when you listen to the conversation of some of these women led podcasts. And it's not even the women only. I hear men, and they're thinking, and how they, I listened to Paul Pierce. He was on Shannon Sharp show, Club Shay Shay, a few days ago, and listening to him saying, oh, marriage is for broke people, and that stuff like that, man. I'm like, man, this is the conversation that we're having, and people think highly of Paul Pierce, like the young boys or whatever. Now, how easy is that to influence their, their mindset? Just that slogan, "Marriage is for broke people." I'm like, man, we've let other people, like I said, integrate our culture, integrate our communities, push their agenda. They leave, and now we're doing the pushing, so they can say, "Hey, y'all did it to yourselves." I mean, it's just totally messed up right now in our community, and it is on fire. Our community, I have to be truthful. Our community is on fire.
Brother, metaphorically on fire, that's what King talked about, leading my people into a burning house. And that's on point. And again, I can't, in my mind as well, this sexual objectification, man, that's going on. And it's almost like, you're back to that $3,000 bag, Peacemaker. It's almost like, okay, if you want to lay with me, then you're going to have to buy it. I mean, basically, that's what they're saying. And so if you ain't going to do that, there's nowhere in the world you're going to lay with me. So then they just becoming for lack of a better term, high class call girl. Then we're in this thing. What's the difference in that and the objectification that our ancestors experienced at the hand of the European? Our minds are just cluttered, and some kind of way we got to get our minds freed up. We see all of the intermarriage, and it wasn't until 1962 when you had that interracial marriage being made official, and then today it appears like when we get a little money, uh, we want to marry, someone that's of a different ethnicity. And I'm not saying some of those marriages are not legitimate, where they legitimately love each other. But we also know that some of those marriages are marriages where either the brother may feel, think, and believe that he has now arrived, or if the lady or the man feels that they are not fulfilled unless they're able to have a man or a woman of a European ethnicity on their arms. We dysfunctional. We're bipolar. And we're that way because we live in this bipolar nation. And it's been that way from the beginning. And we have to free our minds. And I can tell you, I've been through the process. I remember in high school being part of desegregation. I remember picking up the young white girls and, 2 or 3 blocks from their homes, and after their fathers been out there cheering us on as we were playing. And I was fortunate to be one of those early quarterbacks and early captains of these white teams. And then you pick up the young girl, but you can't go to their home and pick them up. And then you go and you do what you do in those days, and you know what I'm talking about. Don't have to say it straight out. And then when it's over, you take them back and you drop them those 2 or 3 blocks from home because they know their parents would not approve of it. But I thank God that when I got to college, I had it out of my system. But when I was in college, to see so many others begin to run to do the same thing as though that would make them fulfilled, you would think, okay, now you get that done, you get it out of your system, and you then begin to look for a wife that looks like you, or have the same kind of experience that you have. And oftentimes we'll find out it's hard to find some woman that has not been tarnished, has not been programmed with this concept of what you describe, Peacemaker. But it's a tough world today, trying to keep our women understanding that you go back to, if you want to say old school, I say wise school. If you're a woman and you listen to this and you want a good man, I'm just be plain. Keep your legs closed.
Yeah, I would say one of the things sitting under your tutelage and sitting under the other brothers that we talk to is also is if we're going to be the leaders, if we're going to be the black men that we proclaim to be, then we have to be leaders all the way around. And then we have to be the ones to say to our sisters, I'm not like that. That's not who I am. And just like my brother Saba Key has said, there seems to be a resurgence of black men who are saying we're not tolerating that. We're not tolerating that type of behavior from our sisters or from other black men. That we're going to abstain, we're going to uphold, and doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect. Doesn't mean that we might not fall, but for the most part, we're going to do the right thing.
I had a conversation with one of my uh, cousins recently, and she mentioned that she is back into the dating arena, and that's why I want to be. I'm trying to be balanced as much as I can, because it's not just the women. She was saying that she was back in the dating arena and she wanted to get some advice, because she wasn't sure if somebody was like ghosting her, a male or whatever. And she's a cousin who's virtuous. She wants to maintain uh, until she gets married. She don't want to have sex until she gets married. And she said that every time she engages in the conversation, everything will be going fine, on the first few dates or whatever, and then she engaged into that conversation and say that she wants to hold herself uh until she gets married. She says everything changes. She said then some of them stop calling, stop wanting to go out or anything, and she was getting frustrated to the point where she was actually crying on the phone. And I was consoling her and letting her know, like, there are some good men. I was trying to tell her, maybe it's the places, that she's searching, try to change up the scenery or whatever. But then I heard it from my daughter, my own daughter, saying the same exact thing. Like, and you like, wow, like, man, are we a problem too? Are we only thinking about sex right now and don't want to go through a relationship where, in a dating realm where you're dating and you're getting to know each other and, you're trying to work towards a marriage? Or are we only out here dating just to get some and then move on to the next one? So we have to be balanced in this thing, because some men out here only want to get what's between the legs, hit it and run, and don't want a commitment. They're portrayed like they want a commitment till they get what they want, and then they're gone. So there's two sides to the equation, man. But again, we've been trained this way, and now we find ourselves in this situation that we're in.
Yeah, that's why I said Saber Key, but it's just not the women that have to say we're going to abstain, but it's us brothers. And even if it is given to us on a silver platter, we still have to say, you know what? I want something more. I want something sustainable. I want something, and you can even, you know, say, I know I used to do this and I know I used to do that, but I'm tired and I want so much more. And I think that's where a lot of brothers are getting at. A lot of brothers are just tired of hitting and quitting. They want sustainable relationships. They want to be able to have a place where they can go and relax and chill out with a friend, with a companion, and want to be with somebody that they can even be attracted to. So I think, well, I can speak for myself and some of the brothers that I hang out with. We're tired. We want something more. We've done the whole um our filling our oats and all that craziness and stupidity that we were taught. Sometimes by not having a father, but sometimes not having positive male role models. But I think we've now come into an age of saying there's so much more out there, and we want to be like our grandparents and our great grandparents when they've seen arguments and disagreements, but they still loved each other. They still was with each other. Grandma and granddad was together for 30 years, for 40 years, and they still love each other. And I think that's what a lot of brothers are striving for now.
Well, brothers, I have shared with you and with Cyber, you lead that revolution. You lead that revolution by saying to a woman, if you can't hold yourself for 30 days, 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, until I get to know you or you get to know me, so we can make a determination if we can even have a conversation when it's not sexual, then I really don't want to waste my time being with you, because I know what an orgasm is. I've been through that and it's never changed. The last orgasm I had was the best orgasm I had. And so we have to be the lead. We have to be the ones that's going to change. I reference this book a lot, Bound in Wedlock by Dr. Tara Hunter, where she said how our own Black women learn the concept of sexual manipulation. We got to get to a point. I was reading the other day about, or listening to a broadcast the other day about, these women, these singers that had these sexual impulses, that they seem to always be sexually aggressive. But we got to find a way. If we're sharing with our daughters, we got to continue to reiterate. We got to share with the brothers. We can't be silent on this subject matter, because you hear the Europeans saying, I go into a room and there's Black women in the room, I become sexually aroused. Why? Because in his mind, in his bipolar mindset, he's always been told and programmed by other Europeans that, oh, that Black woman, she's something else. She's just wild. She's just freaky. She's just that. What I can tell you from personal experience is that European woman that's really wild, and the European fight for femininity and the feminist movement is what contaminated the mind and the spirit of our Black women, until that feminist movement began to emerge, led by Margaret Sanger and all of that whole group. It contaminated the spirit even more of our women. But I do believe there's time. But it takes us and Black Men Declare and others. If you're listening to this broadcast right now, you as a brother, you as a sister, it's your responsibility to talk to your friends, your sons, your daughters, your nephews, your nieces, your grandchildren, whatever relationship you may have with somebody else. Encourage them not to become physical until they have matured in that relationship, and it's somebody that may want to spend an extended amount of time with you. It's not good. I'm going to tell you, there may be some exceptions where people meet each other, fall in love, get married, or however they want to have their relationship. But please, we must stop this sexual attraction. And I remember one time, Peacemaker, you said when you were somewhere and the lady asked you even which way did you want it to go. I mean, that's just a shame. That's just a shame, Cypher. I'm sorry, man. We got to get better. We got to get better, brothers. We got to get. It breaks my heart, man. I'm serious. I give everything this personal thing, brothers. There may be an exception. I got a lady pregnant at 18. I'm not proud of it, but I'm now proud of the son because what he's become. And it wasn't because of me. It was simply because God, for whatever reason, anointed that seed. I can't take credit for it. But at the end of the day, I'm glad now that I see what's happened. And when he went through it, and the number of children, he has 10 children. 10 children. His mother never had another child. And it really broke me down when she came and said to me when at his wedding was that, thank you for my grandchildren. And I had never looked at it that way. And sometimes God will use situations that don't seem to be right I ran from that relationship not really knowing for almost 16 years. But even this morning, he and I have been in communication this morning. And I was with his mother one time. Sometimes, man, God has a different way. So there may be situations like that to where you don't plan it, you don't run no game on it, it just happens. In some kind of way, God can turn it into something good. But nobody should use that as a rationale. But I'm gonna get a little emotional. Come on, brothers. Come on.
Yes, sir. That's a tough situation that we find ourselves in, man. It really is. We just black folks are at a crossroads, man, and we've been at that crossroad. It's almost like we've been at the stop sign for a better part of 30, 40 years, and we don't know which way to go. You know how when sometimes you come to a four-way stop sign, you got four cars there, they all pull up the same, but they telling you to come on, you telling them to come on. You know, nobody wants to make that move because they're afraid of being in an accident. I think that's where we at as black people right now. We at that four-way stop sign. We don't know which way to go. There's other congestions there, and we just stuck, man. We're stuck. But my concern is that we're allowing the wrong people to control the flow of traffic in our community. We counting too much on the entertainers, sports figures. You know, we're counting too much on them, or we leaning too much towards them to the point where every athlete now has podcasts. I'm not against that. I'm not against that. Them that's their thing. They work hard. They got their money. They do whatever they want to do, and I'm all for it. But if they come with a certain mindset, if those athletes all coming with the same mindset, then it's dangerous to our community. Not only sports figures, but other entertainers and stuff. But they're coming with this mindset, this Hollywood agenda, you know, whatever. We have to be concerned about that. We have to sound the alarm, like, hey, you may not want to, you know, listen to a whole lot of that, because that mindset is the Hollywood agenda that has been happening for the better part of 60, 70 years and destroying our community. So we have to be very careful of the airways and who controlling the airways and the messages that are being broadcast on the airways that we, for whatever reason, are in tune to. Because most black people, they're listening to the same type podcasts, they listen to the same type shows. You know, it's just that way. You go to the Breakfast Club, and I love the Breakfast Club. I love listening to them. The brothers are successful. They, you know, the two brothers that's on there, they both got wives, been through struggles, but maintain their wives, got families or whatever. But you know, you see a large part of black people listen to that. You see a large part of the black population listen to these other podcasts and stuff, you know. But we have to be mindful of the messages that are being pushed on all platforms, including ours. Like, we have to be selective and thinking, like, do I want to spend an hour listening to this, and it may be full of garbage and negativity and nothing that's promoting the unity of our culture. Like, I've actually started turning off when they're not talking about unity of our culture, and they always a negative. It's always negativity towards it. I tend to turn it off nowadays, and that's the approach that has been helping me. I just, as soon as I hear it, that negativity, I turn it straight off. But if they're talking about how different ways to build our community, even if I disagree with what they're talking about, I will listen, because they're at least trying to figure out how to move the community forward. And sometimes the people who have the right answers are the people who you disagree with.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, bro. I think that we have to get to the place that we're not just coming up with the issues, but we're coming up with the solutions. Anybody can, and this is the way I used to run my office and my staff. Everybody has an opinion, but who's coming up with a solution? who's coming up with plans. And even if we don't agree with your solution, at least you contributed a solution or some way of strategizing of how to get out of this situation. And I definitely believe that Black Men Declare, our podcast, is one of those voices that are not just pointing towards the issue, but we're also pointing towards the solution. You might not agree with our solution, but at least it is a solution. At least it is a strategy of getting out and bettering the quality of our lives. So I challenge, as my final thought today, is brothers and our sisters. Let's. It's good for us to talk, but let's strategize. Let's brainstorm and come up with some solutions and implement those solutions so that we can better the quality of each other's lives and make the Black family strong again. It is definitely something that's needed.
Godfather, let me say this real quick. I just want to ask my brother Peacemaker if do you think that using the word solution is the right word? Because in my mindset, when I hear somebody say solution, that means that they saying that they already got the answer versus saying strategy, like you said, because you was using both of them actually. I like the word strategy. In my opinion, this is not a right or wrong thing. I'm just asking, I just prefer to use strategy because strategy signifies that it's an attempt to move something further along, and it may or may not work, and we may have to come up with a different strategy to try it. And you can always change strategies in the middle of a race versus a solution. When I hear solution, I always think about that's all somebody's already figured they got the right answer, and that's the only answer. And I think so. In some parts, that's what happened in the civil rights era, that they thought the solution was civil rights and integration, and nobody wanted to hear that there was different strategies on the board that we could have tried or we should have been trying. And so we went along because everybody just hooked on to, oh, this is the solution, this is the final thing, this is what's going to get us over the hump, and just went down that path. So what's your thoughts on that?
I understand your point, but for me, I'm always looking sort of at the end goal. What's the goal? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? And I'm open to many ways of trying to get to that goal. I learned from hanging out in the streets. You never go home the same way. Is a strategy that, because you never know who's following you. And I took that into my business, that there are many ways to get to what I would say an answer or end goal. I think, and I have learned that being open to many different strategies, many different roadways to get to that end goal is helpful and needed. So when I say solution, that's kind of my mindset, that though we might have set a goal and a solution, I'm still open to many different possible ways of getting there. And then even as we go halfway through, then we might have to change the end goal. One of the things I love about my GPS that I use is that it's always recalibrating. And I think that's what we have to get to, a place of understanding. I'm trying to get home, but the way I get home, sometimes due to situations or circumstances, it has to recalibrate and find me a different way. And so that's what I mean as far as solution and goals and strategies.
Well, if I may, I would coin and capture that as strategic options. You're developing strategic options. And so those strategic options can lead you to some form of a solution, but even those are evolving constantly For example, if we use integration where people thought that was going to be the answer, but they didn't think about the level of accommodation that black folks were going to have to deal with, or the level of expected assimilation. And so during that process, you lost and you could lose a lot of the cultural benefits and greatness and goodness. I have in my office a picture of me in the sixth grade with the all black, school, all black teachers that were standing there, and I never realized the level of knowledge and preparedness that they gave me in just those first 6 years of school, so that when I moved north to Detroit and was put into an environment initially of integrated, school, afraid to speak to those white children, and then for a 6 month period interfacing with them and being able to yet still be an honor student. And sometimes we just don't realize that we are just as capable when we are together than when we are not together. And so I just think it's a strategic options we should always be putting on the table. And as you say, we learned that you can make a change, whatever it is, because those strategic options are going to be based on assumptions. It's just like building any kind of business plan, any kind of operational plan, any kind of technical plan. You're going to build it based on assumptions that's available to you at that time. And so I think the mistake we make sometimes is that, as Cyber said, like, this is the answer. No, it's a strategic option. And as we move forward, we'll be flexible, that we can adapt to whatever the environment presents. Because the only thing that's been consistent in America is the bigotry, the supremacist mindset, the world that we live in, this white Zionist system that has been consistent. And some of us has been laying dormant for the last few years. And I think Cyber mentioned it earlier, 47 now in this time has reignited that outward level of nationalists and bigoted and that we face each and every day here in America. We know we can deal with it. So, brothers, let's make some comments. That's how I see it. We can deal with it. We have proven that. There's no need. I tell my children all the time, there's no need for us to have to prove that we can communicate or we can compete with anything. We already done that. We already been through that. So now what we need to prove to ourselves is, how do we work together? How do we develop an appreciation and a tolerance of each other, instead of when we look at something differently, then all of a sudden we're going to put up a wall. No, we got to learn how to accept and look at the things that are more alike than different. And that's what we fail to do sometimes. But that's just my opinion. But I like this conversation that we've had today. We covered a lot of areas, but it's been free flowing. And brothers, any final comments you guys want to share today?
I really enjoy the thought of being at a 4-way stop that my brother, and I thought about it and said, man, sometimes I've come to a 4-way stop and fell asleep. And now I'm like, okay, it's time to move. And I have to be the one to be the trendsetter. I have to be the first one to say, okay, we all at this 4-way stop. I'm going to go first. And then you all try to go after in some kind of consistent way without hurting each other. So I'm challenged to be the initiator, to leave that 4-way stop and go to the land where God has called me to be. So I challenge our brothers, don't fall asleep at the 4-way stop, but go ahead, man. Thank you, Cyber, man. That's a great illustration, man.
My brothers, my final thoughts is that we as black men declare have to be charged with bringing a different thought process, the thought community into the fold and having a dialogue with, whether they're Muslim, whether they're Christian, whether they're Jewish, whether they're atheists, whether they're Black Israelites, whether they're Republican, whether they're Democrat, whether they're independent, whether they're straight, whether they're gay. We have to be charged with creating a conversation where every group is heard. And from every group is heard, coming up with the best strategies and having a way to move out on those strategies. Because I really feel like if we really sit that some of the thing, and I'm guilty of it. I'm speaking because I'm guilty of it. Like if they don't agree with you, you shut down the conversation, right? There's the brother that I mentioned on the last episode, the Chad, Chad Jackson or something like that, the one that's doing the documentary about MLK, and I think he's actually released it. This brother has taken a very serious, very serious attempt, in my opinion, to destroy the legacy of Dr. King. For whatever reason, he came up with, he wanted to do this or go down this path and said, I disagree with it strongly, but he went down this path. Who's open to even consider listening to the reasons why he come up and saying that Dr. King was bad for black people and that who's even willing to listen and to say that he's not only saying that I'm just telling us, he's saying, no, let's have a conversation. I'm putting this forward as something to say, like, we made this wrong direction, but I want to go further and I want to make a better, we want to create a better path. But this is where I'm saying that we made the error at, and come and debate me, come and have a conversation with me. Who's even willing to do that? Now, I did hear Killer Mike said that he would, that he said, I disagree with the brother, but I know the brother has his right to put his opinion out. And, they've been having quiet conversations between each other and see where that goes. But who else is willing to do that? Far too long in our community, it was like, if you're in the Black Panther or you're in the Black Power movement, you over there, we're not listening to you. If you're the Civil Rights movement, you're over here, we're not listening to you. Oh, it's been far too long, man, and we can never achieve what we need to achieve in this society with the way it's structured and how we operate. We cannot achieve what we need to achieve if we don't have that conversation.
You know, brothers, as we close, that's what we have been shown in history. Martin Luther King was willing to allow Bayard Ruskin, who was a homosexual, to be part of his strategic team. Baldwin, who, his great debate against Buckner, was homosexual and all of that, but he had some powerful, insightful perspectives on the Black experience in America. I mean, that's just a sexual preference. I mean, people have wondered how Cyber Aki and I could do things together, on a basketball court because we may, approach life differently. But what I find, we got far greater things that's alike than different. And so you don't look at the differences. You look at all of those things that are similar. Although I might be married and the peacemaker is not. Again, we have far more things that are alike than different. And so we have to look for the similarities. I was so pleased when my son gave me tickets to a play one time that was dealing with Malcolm and Martin. And it ended up where they looked at each other and say, we both going to be murdered, right? And they said, yeah. And they said, who you think is going to go first? And they said, well, they agreed Malcolm probably was going to first. And I'd be doggone if it didn't happen. And I know it was a play, but they both died at 39 years old. And at the end of the day, when you really study them, they were more alike than different. They had different strategic options in how they were going to get it done. But once they came together and said, we got the same objective, you could put all of that other stuff behind. And then some time ago, Cyber, you mentioned the fact that we could even bring our religions to the table, but at the end of the day, we don't have to try to implement based on, oh, it's only because if we do it according to this. We have to open our minds. God did not give us a thought process to put us to have everything in a box. We have tremendous skills and abilities. The experiences that we've had in life, they are for a reason. And we have to use those experiences because guess what? We now are becoming the elders. Yeah, I might be a little bit older than you, Peacemaker, and then a little bit older than Cyber, but we are the elders. And we have to be examples of how on the surface we all three may seem to be different, but we are all bound by a great desire to see our people grow and improve. Brothers and sisters, if you've enjoyed this conversation, we appreciate you hitting that like button below. We want you to become a subscriber. We're asking you to share this with your friends, neighbors, loved ones. And by all means, hit the notification button. So when we're on next episodes every Tuesday. And you may hear some even prior to that Tuesday because we are Black Men Declare. And we will come out sharing from a Black male point of view. Until next time, this is the Godfather, Mike Side. Peace.